Here, let's talk about first of all the income. It looks pretty darn good as far as the revenue is concerned.
Well, yes, revenue is up around the state. Now, of course, we got to realize how much money was infused into our economy last year through the federal government stimulus checks and the unemployment number. So I'm sure that actually I've been pointing to that to say this is another reason to do the income tax, because one of my arguments has been you give people more money in their pocket, they're going to spend it, and we've seen that be true over the last year. And I think that's why our revenues are up almost $1 billion over estimate.
Yesterday we had the outgoing Mr. Gottfried.
Mm-hmm.
Alan Gottfried came in, and while he was on the phone, and he's talking about, I think we had a record month last month as far as casinos concerned.
Right.
I think he said $261 million.
Yeah,
which
that again makes the point that you give people money, they're going to spend it, and the economy turns over, and economic prosperity results.
What's your thoughts now since the last time you were on as far as where this is going during the summertime in the meetings?
The income tax?
Yeah.
I have been able to speak to a number of groups. June apparently is convention month, so last week I was able to speak to supervisors, the Farm Bureau, Biloxi Businessmen's Group, the automobile dealers, and others, and everywhere I go, there seems to be a positive reception.
Even with the automobile dealers?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You met with Senator Harkins?
I have had multiple conversations with him.
Mm-hmm.
He indicates a willingness to work, and we're going to continue to try to push forward to try to find a plan that will get rid of the income tax.
Have you heard anything at all as far as a timeline or heard anything from the governor's office where we stand as far as a possible special session with the medical marijuana?
No, sir, have not heard anything from him. We continue to talk with the lieutenant governor in that office to try to develop a plan. In fact, had a meeting yesterday within my office, not with his office, but looking at the different proposals that are out there. Dr. Dobbs has given us his thoughts. We have, of course, what was passed in Initiative 65. We have the Senate bill that was presented last session. A lot of people point to the Alabama plan, their law, so we've looked at that, and we're trying to take what we think is the best of all those and put it together.
When you look at that,
and I didn't answer your question, but the purpose being to try to find an agreement, and then notify the governor we have an agreement and we're ready to move with a special session. Obviously, only the governor can call a special session, and the way we've done it in the past, both with Haley Barber and Phil Bryant and others, is we try to get to an agreement before the session is called so that we don't stay down there a long time.
The Senate is shaping their bill now, and we were told yesterday it may be a couple of weeks out, 3 at the most, 3 weeks out. What are you guys doing as far as the House is concerned? Is the bill that you guys are going to present the 65, a mirror 65?
Well, it's going to be what we're looking at, like I said, is we're trying to take each of those 4 things that are out there and try to take from those what we think are the best of each.
But you are going to have a bill to present?
Well, we may have a bill, or we may just work off the Senate bill.
If you call a special session, should there not be a House bill ready to go?
It doesn't necessarily have to be. We could all work off of one bill and have an agreement on that particular bill, which we've done in other special sessions as well.
As it goes to conference.
Yeah. Well, you may recall back in 2000, they had that was before I got in the legislature. I just have heard about this, but there was a special session called to do medical tort reform, and they sat down there for 83 days looking at each other, trying to figure it out. We don't want to get in that situation, so we're going to try to come forward with an agreement on what the thing looks like before we do the special session.
Well, as Speaker of the House, you will have quite a bit of power in the House of Representatives, and your thoughts on the sticking points here, the things that are do or die for some people. Number one is going to be smoking or no smoking.
Correct. That's a point of contention. It's got to be resolved.
What do you think?
Indoor and outdoor is another point of contention.
I didn't think about that. You're talking about indoor and outdoor. In other words,
there's
Well, if it's edible, that's not a big deal.
That is great. Well, the indoor-outdoor thing is, can it be grown indoors or can it be grown outdoors?
The growing of it.
The growing of it, right. Not where you can consume it.
I thought you were saying, can you smoke it indoors or outdoors? No. I thought that has never come up before. So.
No. I'm talking, where can you grow it? There's a school of thought that says it must be grown indoors, therefore you can control the security of it.
Is that a big deal,
the quality of it.
It seems the market would take care of that, and the growers would understand that they need to be able to control it.
You would think, but there's a push also to let when you say that it can only be grown indoors.
Yeah.
Then the only people that can do that are those who have the resources to build an indoor facility and do the things that would require a greenhouse type.
It's going to be a bigger investment.
I'm not an expert on all that, Paul. So
but you and I grew up in the state.
Arguments are.
You and I grew up in the state, and of course I was a farm boy. I didn't have to do it, but a lot of people have stolen some sweetened ears and roasted ears when they were perfect. So you can imagine what an open marijuana farm
would be like. Marijuana field might be like. You're right.
And don't be lying, because a lot of people have done that at a particular time in the maturation of corn. So
those are two of the things you mentioned. The taxation.
Taxation is another thing. And your thoughts on that?
Well, obviously there's one of the flaws of 65 that a lot of people didn't realize, because I heard a lot of people say it, is let's just have it and let's tax it and we'll build roads and bridges and schools and fund teachers and all that. And that's not what 65 allowed. 65 required any taxation, limited how much it could be taxed, and then what tax was implemented had to go back into the program. So that's got to be resolved. The zoning of it, again, people thought they didn't realize on Initiative 65 there were limitations on zoning. So the Municipal League wants to make sure that that the cities can zone it, or they can opt out. That's another point of contention. So those are four things right there that come to mind.
That's the official word from the Municipal Association?
Well, that was the genesis, the point behind the lawsuit that Mary Hawkins filed was she didn't like the fact that she and her city council couldn't regulate or zone where this thing, where a dispensary would go. So those are some of the issues that have got to be worked out.
All right. House Philip Gunn from the Trustmark Studios. Where were we when we last left you? We were talking about
I don't know, but I did want to make one point. I was listening as I was driving in. You were talking about the Palmer House.
Yeah,
I want to give a plug to that group as well. As you know, in the House over the last 2 or 3 years, we have engaged on the human trafficking issue. We've passed a number of bills over the last 2 sessions that address human trafficking, trying to curb and stop human trafficking. And one of those bills looks to find places where children can be placed once they are rescued from that. And Drake Bassett and the people at the Palmer House have stepped up to be engaged in that. I have, in my interactions with them, I found them to be great people, and just want to put in a plug for them. That I'm not being paid to do that. That's just my experience with them, and they do a great job, and to the extent people can support them, they should.
Kudos to you. I remember years ago, and I mean years ago, when we first brought up a couple of interviews, and nobody even heard about sex trafficking. And certainly it was years after we began to kind of concentrate on that. It was years later that we had sheriffs in, and the focus was on how bad this was, not only in the nation, but in Mississippi.
It was shocking to me to learn that, too. I had no idea.
Kudos to you to bringing this up and making it one of your missions.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But I, too, was not aware. And then I attended a few functions and learned just how prevalent it is right here in the shadow of our houses, and just felt like we need to do something about it. And so we've over the last couple of years have passed a couple of bills, and now we're deemed to be one of the top states in the country that's fighting human trafficking. So
under a new flag, and we were talking off mic a year ago at this time. It was a little bit different, wasn't it?
Well, a year ago this week is the week that all that flag change came to fruition, and it's been a year, and I think as I travel the state, Paul, you see a renewed excitement about it. You see it in front of people's houses and in different places, and I know it was a tough issue for many people. I do think that we have turned the corner on that, though, and proud to see that Proud to see it waving around the state.
It is good to see it, the flag waving, and it's also good that every story comes up where you have some biker gang or whatever it happens to be flying the Confederate flag, that we're not immediately tagged on that story.
Right.
So kudos for that also. All right, let's talk about the Medicaid expansion. When Dean Kirby was on this week, we were talking about it. He says there is a desire in the Senate to find some way that this might work. In the House, not so much, I guess. Your thoughts on that?
Paul, we have been very clear on our side that we're just not for that. I just don't see that. We forget that the people who pay for that are the taxpayers, and everywhere I go, I give that reminder. The people are the ones paying for those benefits, and the tax that falls on the taxpayers. And the more we expand, the more burden it falls to the taxpayers. And I made that comment at a place not long ago, and the guy said, "Well, don't politicize this." That's not politicizing it. That's a reality. And right now, we're providing benefits to those who are the most in need.
Yeah.
Those who are the completely unable to provide, we're doing that. What they're wanting to do is expand to the next tier of those who are working. So I just don't see that is that's just not a conservative position. And when we expand, we're adding to the rolls an enormous number of people. And the concern has always been we can't afford that. And all it takes is the federal government deciding they're not going to pay for it anymore. And then it falls on the backs of the Mississippi taxpayers. So we just, for us, that's just a non-starter. Now, I don't know what they mean by Medicaid expansion or extending benefits. But anything that falls on the backs of the taxpayers, we're not in favor of.
I do wonder why we've never had, or maybe we haven't, I just haven't heard about it, as far as in the peer committee or just as study committees. Would Governor Bryan always talked about performance-based, which to me is a checks and balances for the taxpayers. If we put a program out there, how is it working? Is it working? Is it babysitting? Is it nurturing a problem? Is it causing more of a problem? Or is it getting the job done? Whatever it happens to be. Do we do this on performance based on actually Medicaid itself? Over the years, over the generations, when we give people free care or health care, is it getting people off? Is it helping them? Is it making them healthier?
That should be the goal. I've always maintained that we need to the extent that we can, decrease government dependency upon the government. That should be the goal. We need to move people off in whatever arena you're talking about. We need to decrease government dependency, and expansion, in my view, just is going in the opposite direction. Yeah. That's increasing government dependency.
I think the answer to that is no. The Medicaid rolls have continued to be considered about the same for many, many, many decades. Not only that, it's generational. And if that's the case, then we put another 200,000 or 300,000 people on there who are already making slightly higher incomes. Is that going to help or not? Not to be mean, but just to say that, like, wait a minute, we're spending all these taxpayer dollars. If we're going to continue to spend them, is there a better way to do this that we're going to come out with a better outcome?
Exactly. And that's a question that's got to be looked at.
We have new laws coming up July the 1st. Do you have any idea about any thoughts on any of those that that you would like to talk about?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to think what all we did last year that might be a
reform thing. I think we did.
I'm sorry. What'd you say?
Didn't we have some correction bills out there?
We had some criminal justice reform bills that came about. A lot of people may not be aware of the history there, but the federal government for years has been on the state. This is going back into the Trump administration and maybe even before that, where certain groups have sued and said, hey, you got to do a better job of incarcerating people. And our neighbors next door in Alabama got popped for a $2 billion cost for the inadequacies in their prison system. Obviously, we can't afford that. Our entire budget is $6 billion. So, like it or not, we've had to look at different ways of doing incarceration in our criminal justice system. And so there have been some efforts not to be soft on crime, but to be smarter about crime and who is incarcerated, and are there alternative ways to punish? Are there alternative ways to monitor where they go? Obviously, we want the worst of the worst incarcerated. Those who are threats to human life and that sort of thing. So this is an issue that requires a lot of study. We passed a couple of bills last year to do that. The governor signed them. We're going to see, like everything else, you have to wait and see what the impact is and what tweaks need to be made.
We'll go back to Medicaid one more time here on Centene and the state auditor and AG's announcement that they were fined a settlement of $55.5 million minus the attorney fees. But is there anything the House is going to address next year to maybe prevent this from happening again, or is that out of the House's control? Are you leaning somewhere? I know there were a lot of politicians who got money from Centene, and that's probably not going to change. But we are or already have recut that contract, and I'm not sure exactly what the status is.
Yeah, Medicaid enters into those contracts with those providers, and there's like 3 or 4 of them now. I shouldn't say providers, the managed care companies. Right. And those are decisions that Medicaid makes as to who those are. They put it out for bid, and they have to meet certain requirements, and then they decide who they're going to contract with. I've talked personally to the state auditor about this, and what they ultimately concluded was that this was an accounting problem, and the accounting was they overcharged to that tune of whatever it was, $55 million, and they wrote the check back to resolve it. So that's as much as we know about it